Hello, my love. I'm back here for another chapter. This is going to be chapter 4, The Gwythaints. Mellingar bore them swiftly through the fringe of trees lining Great Avron's sloping banks. They dismounted and hurried on foot in the direction Gurgi had indicated. Near a jagged rock, Gwydion halted and gave a cry of triumph. In the patch of clay, Henwin's tracks showed as plainly as if they had been carved. "Good for Gurgi!" exclaimed Gwydion. "I hope he enjoys his crunchings and munchings. Had I known he would guide us so well, I would have given him an extra share. Yes, she crossed here," he went on, "and we shall do the same." Gwydion led Mellingar forward. The air had suddenly grown cold and heavy. The restless Avron ran grey, slashed with white streaks. Clutching Mellingar's saddle-horn, Taran stepped gingerly from the bank. Gwydion strode directly into the water. Taran, thinking it easier to get a little wet at a time, hung back as much as he could, until Mellingar lunged ahead, carrying him with her. His feet sought the river bottom. He stumbled and splashed while icy waves swirled up around his neck. The current stumbled and splashed while the current grew stronger, coiled like a gray serpent around Taran's legs. The bottom dropped away sharply. Taran lost his footing and found himself wildly dancing over nothing as the river seized him greedily. Mellingar began to swim, her strong legs keeping her afloat and in motion, but the current swung her around. She collided with Taran and forced him under water. "Let go the saddle," Gwydion shouted from above the torrent. "Swim clear of her." Water flooded Taran's ears and nostrils. With every gasp, the river poured into his lungs. Gwydion struck out after him, soon overtook him, seized him by the hair, and drew him towards the shallows. He heaved the dripping, coughing Taran onto the bank. Mellingar, reaching the shore a little further upstream, trotted down to join them. Gwydion looked sharply at Taran. "I told you to swim clear. Are all assistant pig-keepers deaf as well as stubborn?" "I don't know how to swim," Taran cried, his teeth chattering violently. "Then why did you not say so before we started to cross?" Gwydion asked angrily. "I was sure I could learn," Taran protested, "as soon as I came to do it, if Mellingar hadn't sat on me." "You must learn to answer for your folly," said Gwydion. "As for Mellingar, she is wiser now than you can ever hope to become. Even you should live to be a man, which seems more and more unlikely." Gwydion swung into the saddle and pulled up the soaked, bedraggled Taran. Mellingar's hoofs clicked over the stones. Taran, snuffling and shivering, looked towards the waiting hills. High against the blue, three winged shapes wheeled and glided. Gwydion, whose eyes were everywhere at once, caught sight of them instantly. "Gwythaints!" he cried, and turned Mellingar sharply to the right. The abrupt change of direction and Mellingar's heavy burst of speed threw Taran off balance. His legs quickly flew up and landed flat on the pebble-strewn bank. Gwydion reined in Mellingar immediately, while Taran struggled to his feet. Gwydion seized him like a sack of meal and hauled him over Mellingar's back. The Gwythaints, which at a distance had seemed no more than dry leaves in the wind, grew larger and larger as they plunged down towards the horse and riders. Downward they swooped, their great black wings driving them ever faster. Mellingar clattered up the bank, the Gwythaints screamed above. At the line of trees, Gwydion thrust Taran from the saddle and leaped down. Dragging him along, Gwydion dropped to the earth under an oak tree's spreading branches. The glittering wings beat against the foliage. Taran glimpsed curving beaks and talons merciless as daggers. He cried out in terror and hid his face as the Gwythaints veered off and swooped again. The leaves rattled in their wake. The creature swung upward, hung poised against the sky for an instant, then climbed swiftly and sped westward. White-faced and trembling, Taran ventured to raise his hand. Gwydion strove to the river bank and stood watching the Gwythaints' flight. Taran made his way to his companion's side. "I had hoped this would not happen," Gwydion said. His face was dark and grave. "Thus far, I have been able to avoid them." Taran said nothing. He had clumsily fallen off Mellingar at that moment when speed counted most. At the oak he had behaved like a child. He waited for Gwydion's reprimand, but the warrior's green eyes followed the dark specks. "Sooner or later they would have found us," Gwydion said. "They are Aran's spies and messengers, the eyes of Inuvan they are called. No one stays long hidden from them. We are lucky they were only scouting and not on a blood hunt." He turned away as the Gwythins at last disappeared. "Now, they fly again to their iron cages in Annuvin," he said. "Aran himself will have news of us before this day ends, and he will not be idle." "If only they hadn't seen us," Taran moaned. "There is no use regretting what has happened," said Gwydion. As they set out again, "one way or another, Aran would have learned of us. I have no doubt he knew the moment I rode from Cair Dathel. The Gwythaints are not his only servants." "I think they must be the worst," said Taran, quickening his pace to keep up with Gwydion. "Far from it," Gwydion said. "The errand of the Gwythaints is less to kill than to bring information. For generations they have been trained in this. Aran understands their language, and they are in his power for the moment they leave the egg. Nevertheless, they are creatures of flesh and blood, and a sword can answer them." "There are others to whom a sword means nothing," Gwydion said. "Among them the Cauldron-born, who serve Aran as warriors." "Are they not men?" Taran asked. "They were once," replied Gwydion. "They are dead whose bodies Aran steals from the resting places in the Long Barrows. It is said that he steeps them in a cauldron to give them life again, if it can even be called life. Like death, they are forever silent, and their only thought is to bring others the same bondage. Aran keeps them as his guards in Annuvin, for their power wanes the longer and farther they are from their master. Yet from time to time Aran sends certain of them outside Annuvin to perform his ruthless tasks. These Cauldron-born are utterly without mercy or pity," Gwydion continued, "for Aran has worked still greater evil upon them. He has destroyed their remembrance of themselves as living men. They have no memories of tears or laughter, of sorrow or loving kindness. Among all of Aran's deeds, this is his most cruel." After much searching, Gwydion discovered Henwen's tracks once more. They led over a barren field, then to a shallow ravine. "Here they stop," he said, frowning. "Even on stony ground there should be some trace, but I can see nothing." Slowly and painstakingly he quartered the land on either side of the ravine. The weary and discouraged Taran could barely force himself to put one foot in front of the other, and was glad dusk obliged Gwydion to halt. Gwydion tethered Melangar in a thicket. Taran sank to the ground and rested his head in his hands. "She has disappeared too completely," said Gwydion, bringing his provisions from the saddlebag. "Many things could have happened. Time is too short to ponder each one." "What can we do then?" Taran asked fearfully. "Is there no way to find her?" "The surest search is not always the shortest," said Gwydion, "and we may need the help of other hands before it is done. There is an ancient dweller in the foothills of Eagle Mountains. His name is Medwyn, and it is said that he understands the hearts and ways of every creature in Prydain. He, if anyone, should know where Henwen may be hiding." "If we could find him," Taran began. "You are right in saying 'if,'" Gwydion answered. "I have never seen him. Others have sought him and failed. We should have only a faint hope, but that is better than none at all." A wind had risen, whispering among the black cluster of trees. From a distance came the lonely baying of hounds. Gwydion sat upright, tense as a bowstring. "Is it the Horned King?" cried Taran. "Has he followed us this closely?" Gwydion shook his head. "No hounds bell like that, save the pack of Gwyn the Hunter, and so," he mused, "Gwyn too rides abroad." "Another of Aran's servants?" asked Taran, his voice betraying anxiety. "Gwyn owes allegiance to a lord unknown even to me," Gwydion answered, "and one perhaps greater than Aran. Gwyn the Hunter rides alone with his dogs, and where he rides, slaughter follows. He has foreknowledge of death and battle, and watches from afar, marking the fall of warriors." Above the cry of the pack rose the long, clear notes of a haunting horn. Flung across the sky, the sound pierced Taran's breast like a cold blade of terror. Yet, unlike the music itself, the echoes from the hills sang less of fear than of grief. Fading, they sighed like the sunlight and birds, bright morning fires, food and drink, friendship, and all good things that had been lost beyond recovery. Gwydion laid a firm hand on Taro's brow. "Gwyn's music is a warning," Gwydion said. "Take it as a warning, for whatever profit that knowledge may be. But do not listen overmuch to the echoes. Others have done so, and have wandered hopeless ever since." A whinny from Melangar broke Taran's sleep. As Gwydion rose and went to her, Taran glimpsed a shadow dart behind a bush. He sat up quickly. Gwydion's back was turned. In the bright moonlight the shadow moved again. Choking back his fear, Terran leaped to his feet and plunged into the undergrowth. Thorns tore at him. He landed on something that grappled frantically. He lashed out, seized what felt like someone's head, and, in an unmistakable odor of wet wolfhound, assailed his nose. "Gurgi!" Terran cried furiously. "You sneaking—" The creature curled into an awkward ball as Terran began shaking him. "Enough!" Gwydion called. "Do not frighten the wits out of the poor thing." "Save your own life next time," Terran retorted angrily to Gwydion, while Gurgi began howling at the top of his voice. "I should have known a great war leader needs no help from an assistant pig-keeper." "Unlike assistant pig-keepers," Gwydion said gently, "I scorn the help of no man, and you should know better than to jump into thorn bushes without first making sure what you will find. Save your anger for a better purpose." He hesitated and looked carefully at Terran. I believe you did think my life was in danger. If I had known it was only that stupid silly Gurgi." "The fact is, you did not," Gwydion said, "so I shall take the intention for the deed. You may be many other things, Terran of Caerdalben, but I see you are no coward. I offer you my thanks," he added, bowing deeply. "And what of poor Gurgi?" howled the creature. "No thanks for him? Oh no, only smackings by great lords. Not even a munching for him helping find the piggy?" "We didn't find the piggy," Terran replied angrily. "And if you ask me, you know too much about the Horned King. I wouldn't be surprised if you'd gone and told him." No, the Lord of the Great Horns pursues wise, miserable Gurgi, while leaping and galloping. Gurgi fears terrible smackings and whackings. He follows kindly and mighty protectors. Faithful Gurgi will not leave them, never." "And what of the Horned King?" Gwydion asked quickly. "Oh, very angry," whined Gurgi. "Wicked lords ride with mumblings and grumblings because they cannot find a piggy either." "Where are they now?" asked Gwydion. "Not far. They cross the water, but only clever, unthanked Gurgi knows where. And they light fires with fearsome blazings." "Can you lead us to them?" Gwydion asked. "I would learn their plans." Gurgi whimpered questioningly. "Crunchings and munchings?" "I knew he would get around to that," said Terran. Gwydion saddled Melangar, and clinging to the shadows, they set out across the moonlit hills. Gurgi led the way, loping ahead, bent forward, his long arms dangling. They crossed one deep valley, then another, before Gurgi halted on a ridge. Below, the wide plain blazed with torches, and Terran saw a great ring of flames. "Crunchings and munchings now?" Gurgi suggested. Disregarding him, Gwydion motioned for them all to descend the slope. There was little need for silence. A deep hollow drumming thrummed over the crowd. Horses whickered, then came the shouts of men and the clank of weapons. Gwydion crouched in the bracken, watching intently around the fiery circle. Warriors on high stilts beat upraised swords against their shields. "What are those men?" Terran whispered. "And the wicker baskets hanging from the pots?" "They are proud walkers," Gwydion answered, "in a dance of battle, an ancient rite of war from the days when men were no more than savages. The baskets, another ancient custom best forgotten." "But look there!" Gwydion cried suddenly. "The Horned King!" "And there!" he exclaimed, pointing to the columns of horsemen. "I see the banners of the Cantrev Reged, the banners of Dowgledon and of Mar. All the Cantrevs of the south. Yes, now I understand." Before Gwydion could speak again, the Horned King, bearing a torch, rode to the wicker baskets and thrust the fire into them. Flames seized the cages, billows of foul smoke rose upward. The warriors clashed their shields and shouted together with one voice. From the baskets arose agonized screams of men. Terran gasped and turned away. "We have seen enough," Gwydion ordered. "Hurry, let us be gone from here." Dawn had broke when Gwydion halted at the edge of the barren field. Until now he had not yet spoken. Even Gurgi had been silent, his eyes round with terror. "This is a part of what I had journeyed so far to learn," Gwydion said. His face was grim and pale. "Iran now dares to force my arms with the mighty Horned King as his war leader. The Horned King has raised a mighty host, and they will march against us. The Sons of Dawn are ill prepared for so powerful an enemy. They must be warned. I must return to Caerdafel immediately." For a corner of woodland, 5 mounted warriors cantered into the field. Terran sprang up. The first horseman spurred his mount to a gallop. Melangar whinnied shrilly. and the warriors drew their swords. I love you, baby.